Ted, free agency has also arrived in the NBA. That means everyone's getting paid. Literally anyone can dribble a basketball in that league. They're cashing checks today.
Hutton, a guy named Max Christie just signed for 4 years and $32 million.
Is that Doug Christie?
With your Los Angeles Lakers. Maybe it is relation to Doug Christie. He played at Michigan State. I don't even remember him at Michigan State. I really don't. I don't remember him being a part of the Michigan State team. But good enough for 4 years and $32 million.
Okay.
Klay Thompson, Paul George, massive contract. It's incredible to me that we continue to talk about the NBA and the fact that they don't have a lot of people watching the games. Ratings are down for the playoffs, the NBA Finals, everything else. Interest in the league seems to be down from our perspective based on television ratings numbers. Yet, they continue to spend so much money on players. Their media rights deals continue to go up. They're about to have a record-breaking media rights deal right now. So I go to a trusted source, Forbes magazine, that has the top 50 most valued franchises in all of pro sports every single year. Went to the 2023 rankings. I'm expecting to see some other leagues maybe catching up with the NFL or the NBA. But what I find, Hutton, is the NBA is still third amongst all professional sports leagues. Now, they're really second because I'm including international soccer as one of them, and there are different leagues represented. But if you look at the top 50 right now, it's NFL with 30 teams, international soccer with 7 in that top 50 most valued franchises, and the NBA with 6. Major League Baseball 3, Formula 1 2 as you go on down the rankings. NBA is still the second biggest league in terms of money-making potential, franchise value, everything else. So we can sit and joke about the TV ratings for the finals and how they compare to the heyday of the 90s, but somehow the league continues to find ways to be very profitable. These franchises are extremely valuable, and because of that, a dude named Max Christie can get 4 years, $32 million with the Lakers after averaging 4 points per game, just like Bronny James averaged 4 points per game at USC. But this guy did it in the NBA, is the difference. So it must not be all bad, Hutton, for that league.
Well, think about the money that the teams are spending on players to not really show much in the postseason. Think about Phoenix and the money they were dishing out. Andrew Brandt had a column recently at his website. I think it's Andrew-Brandt, to give him credit for the site. Just the amount of just millions upon millions just being dished out in order to just lose in the first or second round of the playoffs. And what's the return on investment there? When ultimately you end up seeing the other teams that are relatively unknown by and large, like the popularity goes to a handful of teams in the NBA, and then the rest are just kind of, well, ratings are down because Denver's in the NBA Finals. Ratings are down because we're seeing the Minnesota Timberwolves advance instead of, well, the Lakers aren't in it, you know? The top players don't necessarily ball out every time. But the top players, the big money, it's not like you pay someone and all of a sudden they then raise the bar on how they're going to become, you know, the top star in the league. They're pretty much the same type of player overall. Very few develop after you give them the money.
Yeah, I can't recall too many success stories of this player had this level of production for this team and then someone overpaid for them with a max contract.
Yeah.
And it really worked out for that team. I mean, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, when they teamed up with the Clippers, the thought was, here comes the Clippers championship run.
That's right.
That's going to happen. And instead, I think the furthest they got in the playoffs was the second round. I know 3 years ago they didn't make the playoffs. They've been outed in the first round the last 2 years. So even that didn't work out. And now the Sixers are betting on Paul George to come and win them a championship. It doesn't often work out. And, you know, the big story today just individually in free agency is that Klay Thompson just completely rejected the overtures from LeBron James and passed on the Lakers after LeBron was personally recruiting him to join in with the Lakers and sign with the Mavericks. But Klay Thompson with the gigantic deal also. But
he gets that. Like, that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand Klay Thompson. And I understand Paul George being a superstar player also. But it's the Max Christies of the world and others that we're going to see that are signing for these gigantic contracts that never make sense to me. And the lack of a correlation between not necessarily scandal with the NBA, but a decline in viewership overall for nationally televised games, for playoffs, for the finals, and it doesn't seem to be hitting the overall product of what the owners can make. I was looking at articles from 2017, and in that year, 14 NBA teams lost money back in 2017. I look back a year ago, one team, I think, lost money. It was the Brooklyn Nets, was the only team to lose money for that season. And every other NBA team was profitable because of their revenue sharing, because of their television, media rights package, everything. So the league has actually improved in a time, Hutton, that we would look at and say, especially through COVID in 2020 and the bubble and social justice being a big issue with the NBA and all that, we would say, boy, it probably hadn't gotten any better since 2017, right? There's probably more teams losing money. And that's not the case. More teams are making money from 2017 to now. And I just don't really understand it other than going back to what Mark Cuban always argues with Clay Travis, and that is that they have the right demographics paying attention to them.
They do. Well, for the eyeballs needed to be the second most viewed sport, if they want to view themselves that way. You know, and I'm not separating in this. I'm combining NFL and college football. Here is the Celtics, your champions. They had a payroll this year of $184 million. That's a salary cap of 141, and they paid 184. You could push and extend and go well above if you're willing to, if your owner has cash on hand. And they have four players this upcoming season that will account for $155 million. 4 players. They have Brown and Tatum. Brown's going to make 50. Tatum makes 45. Porzingis and Drew Holiday each make $30 million coming up. That's just to be 4 players on the Boston Celtics. Then you have certain teams. What was the salary for the coach in Detroit?
Is it Lonnie Williams?
$65 million left of guaranteed money. Peace. You know, these owners are just spending money left and right on guys who either aren't going to be there or not even a starting lineup worthy. Still need a 5th player, and you already had 150+ million. It's crazy money. And here's the thing: the NBA is right in the middle of negotiations. It's done. I think they're waiting on July to get here. And hello, July's here, by the way, July 1st.
Monty Williams was the coach.
Monty Williams, thank you.
I was thinking Lonnie Williams was a former Major League Baseball player.
It was a record-setting 6-year, $80 million contract, $13 million a year. He had $65 million left on the contract.
14-68 as the coach of the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, dead money.
This is the Detroit Pistons we're talking about too. Not exactly the market we would think of as the most affluent or the team that's the best franchise. You know, there are 6 NBA teams on that list of Forbes magazine's top 50 most valuable franchises. I mean, we could probably name them and guess right now, but it's the Warriors who are 3rd overall in the top 50, the Knicks at number 9, the Lakers 15, Bulls 39, Celtics 43, Clippers 45. Those are the teams in the top 50.
Okay.
With the Warriors being 3rd behind the Cowboys and the Yankees in all of professional sports. And we're talking international soccer teams, Formula One teams like Ferrari and Mercedes are in this top 50 also.
Do they totally own that arena?
And there's the Warriors right there.
They're totally in control of that arena, like Jerry would be in control of Cowboy Stadium.
They have an arena
AT&T.
smack dab in the middle of the most expensive place to live in America, I think, at last check, or at least they're in Manhattan are the two. So but it is a very profitable setup there for the Warriors.
And it's a great setup for the NBA right now because they're about to sign a deal for broadcast purposes, $4 billion above the one that they just have and just ended. How are they doing that? With ratings that Chad mentioned going down, not up, and we're seeing different things happen with the league in terms of popularity. Well, everything else, by and large, is locked up long-term for media rights. We're going to get into college football in a moment. Things are locked up long-term. The NFL, locked up long-term, at least another 9 years left on their deal. Major League Baseball doesn't know what the hell's going on with their broadcast rights. Half the league's available, half's not. You're in court. And then, you know, the NHL's got their new deal with ESPN and ABC. What's left? It's the NBA, and that's it. So if you want to be in the live sports market, and all of the apps and the streamers do right now, Chad, the NBA is it if you want to guarantee that you are relevant in the live sports market demographic, where you can sell ads, people are going to sit through commercial breaks. We can point and laugh at the numbers being down, but it's still an average of millions that tuned in to the product itself, which is very lucrative right now. And you still have individual star power. That does sell.
And also, if they could just find and identify that next American superstar like LeBron James, that's aging out of the league right now, but maybe it's Anthony Edwards, maybe it's Jason Tatum, but I doubt it, because Jason Tatum, I think right now is kind of at the height of his powers and just winning an NBA title, and he's not really moving the needle individually. But because of all those international stars in the league, if it's really this good, if behind the scenes, as much as everyone wants to make fun of it, if it's this profitable with everything going on, now imagine getting the next LeBron James into the league right now, which they don't have, because all of the names that we know that are the most productive are international player names.
I think it's more than that. I think it's just the perception of where are they putting their big push next. It's global. And I think if you're signing up for the NBA rights, you're behind that push more than you are looking for a Caitlin Clark. The NBA needs more than a Caitlin Clark. It's established. It's not just one player. It's the perception of one league.
Yeah, and look, I just, we want to have fact-based discussions on this show and talk about things that have a backbone behind it. Yeah. So I'm looking into it and seeing all the money being spent, and my head's spinning thinking, well, I thought the league was in trouble. What's going on here? I'm seeing record low ratings for the NBA Finals, yet they continue to just put money out like it's in a Pez dispenser to all these players, half of which I've never heard of. So what's going on? What's the difference here? And then I go and look at it and think, oh, well, they're still second amongst all leagues behind the NFL of the most valuable franchises in the world, not just the U.S., but in the world. It's the NBA, number 2. So things aren't all that bad.
LeBron James is valuable. He's a billionaire. And the Lakers want to keep him. Teams want him. But in order for certain teams to sign him, he's going to have to agree to the minimum. We knew he's not going to do this because his agent said, no, we're not. LeBron's not going to sign for a league minimum deal, no matter if Bronny goes to Phoenix or not. But there are what we call talkers, the topics that are not going to happen, but are still a discussion in order to drive some type of controversy or disagreement. If you think LeBron's going to leave the Lakers, you're going to be on one side of this. And then there's Kendrick Perkins, Chad, who's willing to go the Mike Vrabel route. Maybe not as harsh here. Mike Vrabel's willing to give up his manhood in order to win a Super Bowl. Kendrick Perkins on NBA Today willing to donate another part of his body if LeBron James doesn't sign back.
I'm willing to bet my left big toe that LeBron James is
but not your right one?
Not my left one. That LeBron James is not taking a pay cut or considering taking a pay cut for the Lakers' future. It's for the now. LeBron James wants to win right now. LeBron James knows the pressure that he has, right? And I don't want to take it out of context, but to the fact of we can all speculate, but J.J. Redick was a LeBron James hire. We know this, right? And so he wants J.J. to be successful. How can J.J. be successful? By LeBron James being the best version of himself, but also making sure that the pieces match up. That's why he want to take a pay cut. It's not for the Lakers' future. It's because LeBron won another shot at it. And to be honest with you, they wasn't that far off from last year when you think about it. It's only one team that the Lakers wasn't beating in the playoffs. That was the Denver Nuggets. Any other team, I felt like they could have beat Minnesota. They could have beat Oklahoma City. They could have beat the Dallas Mavericks in the 7-game series. So they wasn't far off, but I feel like he's considering taking a pay cut to get a third star kind of player.
It's going to be, if it is a pay cut headline, Chad, it's going to be structured headline-wise into that. He can sign a maximum 3-year, $160 million deal. Doesn't mean he has to sign a 3-year contract. He could sign a 1-year contract and be a year-to-year player if he wants to. So if he signs the 1-year contract worth up to whatever, or the guaranteed money of put your millions in here, The spin's going to be it's a one-year contract to take this. That way, long-term, they can devote more money. Whatever. It is the short term for LeBron James. His younger son, Bryce, is even saying that on social media, saying, whenever I go to the league in 2 years, he's going to be 42. I have no chance of playing with him. He's saying that in a Q&A on social media. So if he signs a 3-year contract, he's not in the league for 3 more years. And he's not, and Rich Paul's already said he's not going to sign a league minimum contract. That would be taking a pay cut. In this case, he's diverting money long term, but he could do that by signing a 1-year contract, and then we'll go through this process. The summer of LeBron again in 2025, just like we're doing this now in 24.
Yeah, I don't know. So I had a hard time following a little bit of Kendrick Perkins and what he was saying. He's saying, I will give my left big toe if this is about the long-term future of the Lakers. Well, of course it's not.
Right.
I don't know who's really arguing that. He's doing something to try to allow another window of time, maybe 2 seasons, where the Lakers can be relevant in winning another championship for the Los Angeles Lakers and for LeBron James. So I don't know how anyone confused it with he's doing something to make sure for the next 10 years that the Lakers are okay for his son Bronny. I think
it's not a Tom Brady move.
Let's do this now so I can go win now because I don't have a lot of time left. So
I don't
seemed
blame
pretty
him,
obvious
by the way.
to me.
I don't blame LeBron for that.
No.
You're at the end of your career. You do want to win. It is about the here and now. And why would the Lakers fight and draft Bronny James if it's not about the now?
I also think I could see it either way, that if you're a billionaire already, you could sacrifice some money at the end of your career if you really wanted to in an attempt to go win it all. But I can also understand LeBron James saying, yeah, I'm not really going to sacrifice all that much. We'll just manipulate it, finagle it to where I'm getting paid on the back end more, however we got to do it, and I'm still going to get mine and all of this.
The only move that
I'm kind of okay with either one of those, honestly.
Yeah, well, I mean, the only move that hasn't been win now is drafting Bronny James.
Yeah.
But honestly,
not
a
that there's
second-round
a second-round option to win now either way.
No, but that's the only thing. Well, and that move may have been just as good as a second-round pick could be because it's going to enable you to make sure you keep LeBron James. Maybe that was it behind the scenes.
Yeah,
and if you want to win now, you do leave LeBron based on what he's been doing.
The Bronny James move, to me, is just a pure indication that they're all in on doing whatever LeBron James tells them to. And to me, that's a bad thing for the L.A. Lakers.
Can you imagine Kendrick Perkins following through on said bet if something were to happen the opposite of what he wanted?
I mean, it would break ratings for that show that he's on. What, NBA Today?
NBA Today.
If he said, today is the day that I remove my left big toe,
but
live on television, people would watch.
Would they do that on NBA Today, or would they do that on the First Take with Stephen A.?
I think they would need to do it on NBA Today to boost the ratings.
They would need to, but would they do that for Stephen A.? I mean, they show Stephen A. getting out of his car and going into an arena now.
Maybe that would be the concession if they don't pay Stephen A. Pat McAfee money in his next contract that he's demanding. They say, look, we're not going to give you $20 million, but we'll give you $15 million, but we will allow Kendrick Perkins to remove his left big toe on your show as part of this $15 million contract. And that might be what gets Stephen A. Smith back to the negotiation table.
It's a Game of Thrones, House of the Dragons-like move.
I'm having a hard time with House of the Dragon now after last night. I was into it for the first couple episodes, and now...
Too much? Or I haven't seen this latest one.
I don't want to get into the weeds too much, but there's just like
too much.
Were late in Game of Thrones. I understand it's a fantasy epic, but there were just some things that were so unbelievable, about like logistics of different things that, and now this is so far out of whack now of like how people are getting places so quickly and how things are happening that it's. Again,
witchcraft
it's
is
a show that features, Merlins and dragons. So I get that it's not based in reality. But when we get a war plan together and you're telling me these things are happening or this person is getting into this temple and no one's seeing them and they're not getting killed, then I have a hard time following it. And that was last night's episode for me. I'll give it another shot next week, though. I'll be back, Hutton.
Angel Reese continues to get more and more shots, and good for her. She's playing well. All of a sudden, she's cranked it up a notch since the second meeting with Caitlin Clark. There's been a third, maybe a fourth and fifth by now based on WNBA scheduling. But she's, set a record? She's surpassed Candace Parker with WNBA record 10th straight double-double. Well done.
Yeah. Well, Caitlin Clark continues to set rookie records also. I mean, they're living up to the billing right now, both of them.
And
Caitlin Clark out-dueled Diana Taurasi in yesterday's game, and they won. And Taurasi, who was critical of Caitlin Clark, was very complimentary
So
post-game
they're
about
tied 1-1 now, and they dueling. We need the
Tanya Taurasi's 42 years old and still at
Yeah.
it. Going to be playing in the Olympics.
for like a ninth time.
But pretty impressive. She had like 19 points in the game, and I'm thinking 42 years old and putting up 19 in the biggest professional league, not bad.
He says, "Hey LeBron, hold my beer."
Yeah. So what interests me, though, is not Angel Reese's record-breaking so far. It's something that I've talked about with Angel Reese. She seems like someone who has a willingness to play the villain role, but I don't really think she's that willing to do that.
Wait, I think she is. It's one key thing. She wants credit. She wants the credit for doing the things that she's doing. She'll play the villain role if she's going to be given credit for the production and the accolades and the admiration. As long as everyone's cool with it, she's the villain.
Well, so the latest example of what I'm saying is...
Love. You know this. Love.
Yeah, she wants the credit, but I think there's two ways to look at this, okay? And Shaquille O'Neal, I think, hit both sides of this with Angel Reese. And he's friends with Angel Reese. They have the LSU connection. They're pretty close. Angel Reese can text or call Shaq, and that's exactly what she did after Charles Barkley. He had his big rant about the jealous women of the WNBA
Petty.
to shut up, being petty about Caitlin Clark and everything else. Well, on the big podcast with Shaq said, Angel actually called me after that rant. And he said, quote, she was upset, and she asked me, why didn't you say nothing to Shaq? Shaq said, I had to call Reese and tell her to stop reading comments. You don't owe an explanation to anybody because she jumped on me. Why did you say nothing to Charles, is what Angel Reese told Charles Barkley. And he said she's being too sensitive. But he also said the ones that are real sensitive are the ones that are more dominant. Michael Jordan was really sensitive to criticism, right? He used that as a fire that burned within him. He used slights, whether perceived, fake, real, whatever, to fuel what he was doing. Angel Reese kind of seems like the same to me, but she really took this personally when Charles Barkley went off about WNBA players, not even mentioning her by name, I don't think. Just the rest of the league,
The
not
whole
Caitlin
thing.
Clark.
The whole thing, yeah. And this is from the big podcast. You're going to hear from Adam Lefkoe, who's also the co-host with Shaquille O'Neal.
I feel like you've been a big brother to Angel Reese. How proud are you of what she's doing so far?
She's playing great. She's doing it her way. She's playing her game. She's non-apologetic, which I love. And listen, she has to learn, trials and tribulations of this thing. I'm not the big brother that says, bam, 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 bam. She knows if she needs anything, she can call me. I have to call her and tell her, stop reading comments. You don't owe explanation to anybody. Play your game, because she jumped on me. Why you didn't say nothing to Charles? I said, well, first of all, Charles takes up the segment. I didn't have the time to say anything. But I talked to him afterwards. But, and the ones that are real sensitive are the ones that are more dominant. I don't know what the criteria is for Rookie of the Year, but I love the marketing that's going on between her and Caitlin. It's similar to myself and Christian Laettner. We're forever going to be linked until one of us separates from the other.
Well, except for Christian Laettner was on the Dream Team, and Shaq was not, but it was more about Isaiah Thomas that year.
I think it was a pretty clear separation by year 2 of their NBA careers.
Oh, yeah.
You mean the Shaq fella might be a little bit better than old Christian Laettner in the NBA? I know that shocked a lot of people, but
Christian Laettner was in the category of Cherokee Parks.
That was a no contest. I think Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese will hang around the fight against each other a little while longer than Christian Laettner did with the Minnesota T-Wolves back in the day, and Shaquille O'Neal, who completely took off in the NBA with the Orlando Magic.
As dominant as it can be.
How many goals did that guy wreck in his first 2 years in the league? But they had to Shaq-proof the goals for him. I mean, he was named after proofing the goals because he was breaking them down.
A defensive mechanism of Hack-a-Shaq.
Yeah, that also came into the league.
Well, by calling up and saying, why don't you have my back, Reese is doing exactly what Barkley was complaining about on the set, about being petty. In that exact moment.
It sounds petty and overly sensitive.
Yeah.
Because she took that as a direct shot at her. even though he said the league and everyone who's complaining about Caitlin Clark.
See, I think Angel Reese.
There's some real animosity there, and I think that only helps this rivalry.
I think Angel Reese. Though,
I don't think it's on Caitlin's side, though. I think it's Angel Reese is like, I'm not getting my piece of the pie and the credit that I deserve.
It's the credit. It's the jealousy aspect, because in her answer about she wasn't the only one that made this happen, talking about college basketball, she's like, I also did that. It wasn't like no other names were mentioned. It's like I also am a reason why we're doing what we're doing. They're not. It's not a collective
great,
group. It's a
great
duo.
for the rivalry. It's great for the league. It's great for women's basketball.
Oh, it amps each other
and
up.
I don't think it's fake at all. I mean, I think Caitlin Clark is a stone cold killer who works really hard at her craft. I think she gets as fiery as anyone. I think Angel Reese legitimately is jealous of Caitlin Clark, is jealous of the attention she gets. She thinks she deserves just as much as she does. She does not like it. She's not afraid to say that, too, even though she's going to get mad when someone calls her jealous or petty. But she is. But that helps fuel her and fuel this rivalry, which is a net positive for the league.
But maybe she's taking the advice, too, because, again, in her most recent comments that I remember reading about, it was about her in her response just saying, I'm just trying to hoop. I'm just going out here to hoop. And her head coach sitting right next to her gave her a look like, well done. I can't believe you just said that, but well done. You didn't take the question to mean as an insult to you because they were asking about what you did today versus what you didn't do last time. It was just you went out and balled, and she does that very well, and has been doing that over the last couple of weeks very well.
What's crazy to me, Hutton, and all this talk about all this, and these two rookies and Shaq right there. I'm not following the odds on the WNBA Rookie of the Year race to see who's really in it. But talking about, he said, I don't know the criteria for Rookie of the Year, but I think both have a case. Talking about Caitlin Clark and her. Angel Reese was the 7th pick in the WNBA draft.
Right.
Can anyone name picks 2 through 6 in the draft?
I mean, no.
Outside of Caitlin Clark and her. But isn't it amazing that all this talk and her double-double record and everything else, she was the 7th pick?
Did anyone else pick?
I remember looking at the projections and thinking, why is she not 2nd?
Did anyone else pick?
I mean, let's look. Let's look who was picked in between. Because I was shocked when I was seeing the projections of her outside the top 5 because I'm thinking, I know 2 players.
Well,
I feel like the other one that I know would be the 2nd overall pick.
But it was
I thought this would be like Manning and Leaf, going into the draft where it's a no-brainer, but who's going to go number 1?
No, there was much more criticism of Angel Reese's game and not going back for another year. For like the pro readiness of everything.
So the other picks in between, you ready? Ready for this, Hutton?
Sure. Yes.
I know you're ready. Cameron Brink, I've heard of her.
Okay.
Tall, blonde player from Stanford, the blonde. Cameron Brink.
No updates on her.
Number 3, I've seen some updates, and she said some things that...
on WNBA Today.
She's got a lot of things to say. All right. Cameron Brink's got a lot of things to say. What? I can't hear a word he's saying. What's that?
Cardoso from South Carolina.
Yeah, I've got it in front of me. Camilla Cardoso's number 3. Rakia Jackson from Tennessee, number 4. J.C. Sheldon. Raise your hand if you've heard of J.C. Sheldon. Tyler is one of the biggest Ohio State fans I know. I doubt he's heard of J.C. Sheldon from The Ohio State University, number 5.
He says no.
And Aaliyah Edwards from UConn. I only know her because I watched the Iowa-UConn game because of Caitlin Clark.
What about the decision that Chicago had to draft Angel Reese over Peely?
Alyssa Peely from Utah. That was a big one. I also heard that French point guard Carla Lette was on the mind of the Chicago Sky.
Look at France represented again, just like the NBA.
France is taking over the damn sport. When is France going to start dominating us in the Olympics? It's got to be soon, right? I mean, they're top 5 picks, top 10 picks in both men's and women's. It's going to happen, everyone. The French takeover is real.
The takeover of those two, real, in the WNBA.
I'm just still shocked that there were 5 picks in between those two. When you think about the impact of both now. Because Angel Reese is on a tear just like Caitlin Clark.
And I don't know what the other
By the way,
rookies are doing.
It didn't take Caitlin Clark long to figure it out. Those first couple games were a struggle, but she looks pretty good now. Looks like the number 1 overall pick.
And hey, Angel Reese is looking like a top 10 pick, and it looks like Angel Reese of college, right?
Yeah.
Producing like you would expect if you're watching those games. Chet, The Power Four is official. We are here. It's been unofficially official for years. It's really 3 years in the making. Conference realignment across college football. Here we are, though. July 1st, 2024. We're headed into the new era. We're here. And while it's a day that has been on the calendar, I do wonder what the calendar looks like 3 years from now. For the last 3 years, we've been gearing up for Texas and Oklahoma and for the Big Ten and what they're doing with USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, how the Big 12 is maneuvering things to make sure that they keep their revenue. Sponsorships galore we're going to see with the Big 12. ACC, locked up long term. The battle with Florida State, Clemson, and others, that's sure to come. But with the shakeups of the Pac-12 no longer, are we 3 years from now going to see the Super Conference? Or is this the Super Conference that we eventually see break off and the big money flow in after this first initial bump that we see from the college football playoff? Leadership will eventually step forward, but leadership has already done that behind the scenes. And today is officially day one of whatever it is that we're about to see. NIL, leadership, federal legislation, all of that will play itself out long term. In the short term, all of this happened without it. So without the federal legislation now, 3 years from now, how much more could we see? And the bitching and complaining about we need federal legislation when who knows how long that takes. I think the focus of what does Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, what have they been doing behind the scenes? Well, this today, officially day one, was determined 2-3 years ago. So whatever is going to be determined then, like off in the future, they're discussing right now.
First off, I know today's the first official day for it, but some of the just stuff going on SEC Network and everything with everybody at ESPN on the campuses of Texas or Oklahoma,
it's the first day they could do that, though.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. It's an artificial type thing that, we all knew they were coming into the conference, but whatever. Look, it's July. It's the start of, is it July yet? It's July 1st.
Yeah,
right?
it is. Today's the day.
Today's July 1st. So I get it's a slow time in sports. So whatever keeps you afloat.
And I would be there too. If I paid the money,
yeah,
I would be on campus. I would be declaring prima nocta day one.
I feel, though, like there's such a clear separation now. I think it's pretty clear SEC and then Big Ten. They're still together in the same group, but I'm putting SEC ahead of them. But the money-making ability of those two conferences, I can't help but believe that, and I get that there's always inequality with different programs and everything else. It feels almost like the English Premier League. There almost needs to be promotion and relegation with other programs outside of that tier, because I can't help but look at Mississippi State and Vanderbilt and other programs in the SEC and think, boy, Texas and Oklahoma joining the conference is not good for your ability to compete. Is it good for your ability to make more money? Ultimately, yeah. And you're in the main conference, but what's going to happen to some programs that aren't in the top half of those two leagues? Those two super conferences now with the SEC and the Big Ten.
They'll be alive.
It means a lot of money. Yeah, they'll be alive,
but that's it.
If those fan bases are, and I get it. Some of them you say, well, they haven't won anything in 40 years either way, so who cares? It's not really going to change. I don't think this does anything to bridge that gap at all from a competition standpoint. I think adding Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC means Texas and Oklahoma immediately jump into the mix in football to be two of the best college programs within football, which matters more than any other sport. And they're going to have a say in basketball and baseball and everything else too.
It was the SEC and the Big Ten that kept the ACC and the Big 12 in the discussions, really. And I think it's ultimately the networks wanting programming and the inventory more than anything on all these different platforms to have games. If you break off, you need opponents. And then how do you determine? I just think it's, hey, join us. You're going to take this much money. And everyone said, okay. And that's why the Big 12 is going to, they're throwing out the idea that, hey, join us with the conference. Put your logo on at their 50-yard line if you want to. Own 20% of the league if you'd like. We'll get up there with the big boys with funding behind the scenes.
It's the Private Investment Fund SEC Game of the Week. Coming to you live from Riyadh.
We're going live to Colorado.
We're going live to our studio show from Riyadh. Greg McElroy, take it away.